Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. So glad you joined us today. I have a special guest you're really going to enjoy. Daniel Walker is with me. He's the chairman and CEO of Farmers and Merchants Bank, California's strongest bank, goes back 113 years with his great-grandfather. Great stories. Daniel Walker, The Good Life, is next. Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. So glad you've joined us today from wherever you are, whether you're in Santa Barbara, California, or somewhere else in the world. We welcome you. And we want to remind you can always go to goodlifetelevision.org where all the long-form interviews are there. We've had some amazing guests, all walks of life. It's been a great year for us in terms of the guests we've got to have. So all those long-form interviews are there. There's also powerful clips. We've kind of taken some of the gold in those long-form interviews and put them on the website as powerful clips. So just remember those are always there. You can go check them out, and we'd love it. I'm so glad to have my guest with me today. Daniel Walker is with me. Daniel is the chairman and CEO of Farmers and Merchants Bank. We're going to talk a lot about that bank and the history and his family, but welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for having me today. It's a real privilege.
It's wonderful to have you. It's wonderful. I got, with these interviews, I get to read and research and find out very interesting things. And your family is fascinating. And I want to get into kind of the bank in a minute, but it's very interesting. C.J. Walker founded Farmers and Merchants Bank in 1907. Went on to found Farmers and Merchants, the trust company, in 1920. So literally 100 years.
This is correct.
And this is your great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather. So that puts me as the fourth generation CEO of the Farmers and Merchants Bank and the third president of Farmers and Merchants Trust Company.
Farmers and Merchants Trust Company now, $3.6 billion fiduciary. What you've built, one of the strongest, as your slogan says, in California. The reputation of the bank is amazing. But one quick story before we get into business. Take us back 30 years ago, 1990. There are 4 generations of Walkers playing polo. You won the Wickington Cup here in Santa Barbara.
Yes.
And your 90-year-old grandfather was on a horse.
My grandfather, Gus Walker, who was the second CEO of Farmers and Merchants Bank, you can imagine he was born in 1899. So he rode horses his entire life, and horses were transportation for him through many of his early years. He started driving cars later in life, and I asked him what was his favorite car, and he said the Stanley Steamer was his favorite car. But he rode horses all the way through his life. Cattle ranching was very much part of his life. As his son, my father, Ken, started playing polo in Santa Barbara here in 1954, he would always come and join us in his later ages meaning 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds. And he would each visit, sooner or later, climb on a horse, go out, hit the ball, enjoy himself. He maintained his balance and strength excellently all the way through. So I entered this tournament in 1990. I entered it with him, my father, my brother Henry as a substitute, and my son, Matthew Walker, as the fourth generation on the field. As we search polo history, we find that there's really only one other example of 4 generations playing and winning a tournament in the world. So this is quite an unusual event as
amazing.
Well. We finished the tournament on that Sunday afternoon at the Santa Barbara Polo and Racquet Club, and they interviewed Gus Walker, and they said, what would you change? His response was, if Dan had given me better horses, I would have done better. So immediately, it's my fault.
90 years old.
Appropriately so. And he wanted a better horse. He wanted more lively horses, and come on, I want to do better.
That is so great. What was it like growing up in this family?
I'll tell you that the amount of events, the amount of opportunity, the open expressions that you receive from father and grandfather is really a treasured event.
Mm-hmm.
And it's every day. It's not unusual. You go back to school on Monday and folks would, your friends say, well, hey, what'd you do over the weekend? Did you go to a movie? Did you look at what's going on? I said, no, this weekend on Friday afternoon I climbed in a Cessna 210. We flew for 2 hours. I rode horses all day Saturday, gathering cattle. We branded at the end of the day, and they go, branded, what does that mean? So you go through the description of what branding means, of actually applying the hot brand, castrating the bulls, and so forth. I remember in the second grade, it was share in the second grade, and that weekend I was up branding, and in the branding we would earmark the calves, so you'd actually cut a piece of the ear off the calf. So I brought ears home for all of the other students. You can imagine what the parents thought at the end of that day when their second grader comes home and they see an ear of a calf coming home from that day. That was an interesting day.
And you rode your first horse at age 4, a gray mare named Molly.
Molly, yes, indeed.
And so did you fall in love with horses kind of out of the chute?
It seemed that I was attached to horses and animals from the very first day.
Yeah.
From age 12, my father brought me home a dog, so that was my first dog. I'd had cats before then. And I don't believe that I've been without a dog for my entire life.
Is that right?
Even my married life. My wife has enjoyed dogs as well. Linda is her name, and for sure it's always been something that I've had, the horses and the dogs.
C.J. Walker, I have an amazing grandfather also. You have an amazing great-grandfather as a pioneer. When you reflect on C.J. Walker and kind of what he built, he had a commitment to family, he had a commitment to the community. How would you characterize kind of his legacy and how it kind of lives on today? C.J.
started Farmers and Merchants Bank in 1907 on 5 values. And those values are honesty, integrity, the home, the church, and service above self. Mm. And so describing C.J., those values describe him intricately and how he was on every day. Mm. His wife was, I can say, charactered the same way. Yeah. And for them to lead in the community of Long Beach, and in the story, I'll jump back to that story of they met in Northern California, and Carrie then told C.J., I'm moving back to Long Beach with my family. If you want to be a part of my life, come join me. So it isn't Carrie telling the family, hey, I've met C.J., I'm going to live up here. Right. She says, no, if you want me, come down there.
Yeah. And that's how he ended up in Long Beach.
He literally, when she moved down there, he literally started writing her a letter every day, and she would go to the post office, get the letter every day. One day she goes to the post office, no letter. And she's going, oh my goodness, maybe is this the beginning of the end? As she arrived home that afternoon, C.J. was on the doorstep. Wow. He now had arrived to Long Beach. This is in 1894. They were married in 1895. So that's one of the stories that go along.
That's amazing. I love it.
He was dedicated to the community of Long Beach. Was involved in all the types of businesses. it intrigued me that one of his profitable businesses early on was in the ice business because refrigeration hadn't taken place. And of course you had to have a cube of ice in your freezer in order to keep the milk cold and butter cold and so forth. So that was an interesting business.
Wow.
And
I was reading a little bit about him and kind of some of the language that you guys have used. You have those 5 kind of pillars. But I remember also reading somewhere about how he had a desire through banking, through the trust company, to bring people stability and peace of mind, which I think is an amazing vision for us. Because dealing with money, money can be unnerving, the markets, the uncertainty. And he had an interest in bringing people peace of mind. I thought that was so interesting.
I enjoy telling the story to my employees every year of before the Farmers and Merchants Bank, he was the director of the National Bank of Long Beach in Long Beach. And the operators, or the president and chief operators of that bank, made some real serious mistakes in banking. One, they invested all the capital in a failing telephone stock, and they did all the rest of the capital into a building. If you have a failing stock, you can't pay your depositors. If you have all your money in brick and mortar, you can't pay your depositors when they come in for their money. And you can't protect those deposits from any losses. The news went around Long Beach that there was going to be a run on the bank. The initial presidents and directors went to C.J. Walker and said, "Would you take over the presidency?" He agreed to take over the presidency on the condition that all the existing officers would resign, and that then he would be the president and he would bring in his own officers, which he did. Now the run on the bank. How do you stop a run on the bank? And a run on the bank is something that none of us have experienced. Right. He went to a bank friend, I believe it was Mr. Hellman, in Los Angeles. And he said to Mr. Hellman, "I have these loans, I have some of these securities, I would like to borrow money from you." And so he borrowed $500,000 in gold. So in gold coins and gold bars, they arrive on Saturday morning by rail. He goes down by wagon with the local police, picks this up, brings it out to the bank in front of everybody, unloads it in front of everybody, and piles a pillar of gold blocks in front of the window of the bank to identify that they have liquid assets.
We're okay.
And you don't need to make a run on the bank.
Isn't that amazing?
He opens the doors. Folks start to come in. They're withdrawing their money. One lady comes in. She is so nervous she can't write the withdrawal. And she says, "This is all the money I had." And he corrected her and says, "No, this is all the money you have." And then helped her to make her withdrawal so she would make her withdrawal. The run got broken when a man walked in and withdrew $8,000. $8,000 in that day was a giant amount. He paid him out in $20 gold pieces. Okay, so that's 400 $20 gold pieces. Now he's got 2 sacks of gold. He doesn't know what to do with it. He walks over. He finally makes up his mind to redeposit it.
Bring it back.
He redeposits it. And at that point, CJ stepped up on the counter and he says, "Everybody, we'll be open for as long as you want. We'll be open Saturday, Sunday, whatever it takes. But you can see by this gentleman, the bank is liquid and ready to go." It broke the run.
Broke the run.
And everybody went home carrying the news. The bank is liquid. That's the way it was.
That's incredible. What a story.
So from there, he left that presidency and started Farmers and Merchants Bank.
Wow. Those 5 are as good I mean, those 5 are really relevant to today, aren't they? The 5
Yeah,
pillars.
the 5 values
Values.
are what we live by every day. We have to have those in order to do it, and honesty, integrity are really the easy ones. My best example of honesty is I have a lot of employees that I bring in to report to the board of directors. It's my opinion the board doesn't want to hear me anymore, but they want to hear somebody else. And so they quite often ask me, what do I tell the board? And I says, I just want you to tell the truth. Mm-hmm. I don't care what the answer is. If they ask you if Dan's tie is good today and you hate the tie, I want you to say, no, I hate that tie. But that's the honesty level that I want from our employees. And it works out really well for us.
Yeah.
Integrity is a simple one that you must have all the time on how you manage every transaction and how you manage your communications. The home, it's so important to have an important home. Mm-hmm. When you have an important home, and I look at your wife, and I know that when things are happy at home, things can be happy at work.
Right.
The home is so important. The church, to be part of a church, denomination is not a matter to me, but to have a church in your background, again, is a value that leads us every day. Knowing who our Savior is and knowing that we represent that every day in prayer as well as in how we operate makes us California's strongest bank.
Yep. Yep.
Service above self is simple. That's what everyone does, every transaction.
It's worked. Farmers and Merchants Bank, I want to talk about what you do in the community in a second, but the stats that speak volumes to me when I was reading about Farmers and Merchants Bank, this speaks more to me than $3.6 billion or even what you give to the community every year, which tends to be over $1 million a year you give back. More than 100 employees have been with the bank for at least 15 years. An additional 65 have been with the bank between 20 and 30 years. Tell us about how you care. I know you have a big party around Christmas time, 800 people. You give awards. I've heard all about it. It sounds amazing. I don't know if you're going to be able to do it this year, but it sounds amazing. But that longevity, that speaks volumes to me about you as a leader, about the history, about the values. Talk about that and kind of your culture and what somebody could learn who maybe is starting out in business or is in leadership in some capacity. How do you get that kind of loyalty and longevity among your employees?
I think there's some of the key pieces is the values. Some of the key pieces is how we communicate. For me personally, it's how I empower everyone that works for me directly or works for my individuals as well. All the way down to the teller. We want decisions being made by everybody. And by doing that, you allow folks to enjoy their job. We talk about tenure. This year, I have 12 employees that are passing the 30-year mark. I have another 18 that are passing the 20-year mark. And it goes down from there. My favorite one employee is our CFO, who is now coming into his 56th year. Has actually worked for Gus Walker, Ken Walker, and now me. So he's worked for 3 CEOs or 3 generations of the bank. That's amazing.
Wow.
You have the consistency in how we operate and the consistency in the focus of what we do each time is enjoyed by those that enjoy their jobs, and that's what causes the tenure.
That's so beautiful. You've given back a lot. I read an article about, I think most of the time, maybe every year, but you guys invest a lot back. How is Farmers and Merchants Bank trying to make an impact in the community with your partnerships, with your giving?
I think that this goes back again to CJ. The simplest example I can give you is when he would walk to work in the morning during the early 1900s. He would pass a market, and he would give the owner of the market $20. So in case somebody came by that couldn't afford the apple, that market could give them an apple, or give them a glass of water, or give them something, knowing that they were using his $20 to make that happen.
Isn't that right?
When they ran short, he would give them another $20. So that just is where it starts. From that moment, the gifts that we provide out are to entities that have relationships with Farmers and Merchants Bank, that follow the values that we follow. That's where we like to tie our ties to. Mm-hmm. When we make contributions to symphonies are really important to the livelihood of a community. Mm-hmm. Music itself is something that is greatly treasured.
Yep.
That would be an example. So many of the churches, so many of the facilities that serve those indigent individuals that need help today. Mm-hmm. Those are the folks that we're chasing down and tying ourselves to and allowing gifts to be given to them.
Yeah, beautiful.
The bank is very privileged to make enough money to do that. I mean, the bank itself, Farmers and Merchants Bank, now has 25 different branches between Santa Barbara and San Clemente. We're just hovering right at the 10 billion mark, which makes us a very strong bank.
Wow.
Here in California.
Wow. And you know, I think about that story's amazing to me. I'm going to remember that story, the $20 to the merchant so that he can care for the guest I had on here before you wrote a book on leadership, Dr. Gail Beebe from Westmont College, and in that book, actually, it said something that you just illustrated. Greed destroys community, it says, and generosity builds community. I think there's a principle there that C.J. Walker understood, I think you've all understood, about generosity and how it builds community. I mean, the guy that got the apple for free, that's an impact, ripple effect. But it's also comes back. I mean, you're a $10 billion bank 113 years later. Starting with this guy who would give $20 to the merchant because he cared about the hungry person. I mean, that's beautiful. We should make a movie.
Well, let me brag more. And what I'm going to brag about is the year 2020. I'll tell you, you've heard about the PPP loans.
Yep.
And we did 4,200 PPP loans.
Oh my gosh.
We distributed $724 million to the communities that we serve.
Oh my goodness.
Some banks, they decided to set their limit because that was the area of which they were profitable. So they would only do a loan of a certain level. My favorite, I have two favorite loans that we did. One was for $50,000. And when I called this gentleman who said, my bank won't serve me, can you guys do a PPP loan for me? I said, you come bank with me, I'll be glad to do the PPP loan. He says, done. And I said, okay. And I called him up 3 days later and I says, we have your loan approved for $50,000. I could literally feel the tears through the phone. And I quoted this back to the staff that was working on this. I said, today you saved a business, you saved a family, you saved a life.
Yeah. Oh,
And that's what we were achieving with each loan that we did on the PPP. My
Beautiful.
second favorite one is for $875. We did a loan for $875 because that was 2 times the income, or 2 times the payroll of that particular company.
really?
And that's what they needed in order to operate again. I don't know what the
Oh,
business
my
was,
goodness.
but I remember that loan.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and that was just a lot of fun for us.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, in December 31st, 2019, the bank was $7.6 billion in assets. I told you today we're just shy of 10.
Wow.
And the reason is because of this serving of the community,
Yeah.
everybody knowing our reputation, and they say, this is the time we move over to Farmers and Merchants.
Wow. So good.
I'm going to interrupt you again.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was one of my board of directors here this last month, and I told them this story. I said, imagine in 95 years of business, our assets grew from 0 to 2.2 billion. And in the last 95 days, we grew another 2.2 billion.
Unbelievable.
I said,
Unbelievable.
unbelievable
Yeah.
is exactly what it was,
That's
Dean.
incredible. We only have 1 minute left. I didn't really get to polo, but you are a avid. You're a circuit governor of the United States Polo Association. Your family's been involved for a generation. What do you love about polo?
The connection to the horses. I love the connection to the horses first. I love the connection to the other players. It's a passport to the world when you play polo or associate yourself with polo. And as you travel around the world, if I need something, I just call somebody in polo.
Really?
They will drop what they're doing and come and help me.
Wow.
That's what we are as an international family of polo.
That's amazing.
I literally know somebody in every part of the world that deals with polo, and it's indeed a real privilege and a real great opportunity to be associated with the circuit governor position, but also with the whole association, as I sit on that executive committee as well.
Yeah. You said you get to meet so many people outside of banking.
For sure, nobody's in banking.
That's right.
I don't know another polo player that is a banker.
Is that right?
But I know of polo players that are everywhere else.
Yeah. That's
So that's what is fun about polo.
Before we go, I wanted to mention Farmers and Merchants Bank, for those of you maybe watching, is the presenting sponsor of the Turner Foundation's annual Legacy event, where we present Legacy of Service Awards. We had it last December. Amazing event. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you for making it possible. And they're going to be with us for a couple more years. So wanted to thank you for that.
Please don't limit me just to a couple more years. But
yeah, let's do this a long time. Thank you. I was going to ask you about that. Thanks so much for joining us, Mr. Walker.
Thank you.
Privilege. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
You bet.